what is standard bass tuning. That's what we're going to cover today and much more, so stick around. It's all coming up in a minute. Hello, standard bass tuning is what we're covering today with some tips along with that. So if you're new here at my channel, this is I Want to Play Bass. Everything you need to know about bass guitar is here. So subscribe, hit that bell notification, get in the loop, and don't miss a beat. And I'm Donald with the bass instructor of the How to Play Bass online course at iwanttoPlayBass.com. Jump over there, subscribe, become a member for free. And if you want to get your bass tuned real quick, go to the menu and hit Get in Tune and go ahead and tune that bad boy up right now. And when you're serious about your bass playing, sign up and get well on your way. So what is standard tuning? That's what we're covering. And standard tuning, the definition, is the typical tuning of any stringed instrument. And every stringed instrument is a little different than each one, so there are standards for each different stringed instrument. For instance, the electric guitar, it's tuned in perfect fourths. Almost all the strings are perfect fourths except for the G to B, the G string and the B string, which is a major third interval. Now they did this just so you could voice these chords. It made it easier and possible to voice a lot of these chords so you can hit those target notes and function as well. So that's why the electric guitar has its standard tuning is set up as it is. It's just for the purpose of being able to make those chords. The bass standard tuning though is all perfect fourths down there, and it's unique in itself because it's the only instrument that has nothing but perfect fourths in the tunings. Almost all the other stringed instruments are, from the violas and the violins, are a perfect fifth interval, and they're all tuned to a perfect fifth interval. Now the bass is a derivative of the viola or the violin family. The scholars are still trying to figure it out. They haven't come to an agreement on which one it actually comes from because it's got the similar characteristics of each family in there. So they can't come to agreement on which one it is an exact descendant of. So that's a little mystery there in itself. There are several ways to achieve your tuning of your bass from this video that I put out recently on tuning your bass. So check that out. I'll leave a card up here you can check out, but it goes through the steps on how to tune your bass and all of that. So definitely check that out. So standard tuning has always been perfect fourths on the bass. It's never changed. And like I said, bass has always been unique because most of the other instruments are perfect fifths. And the frequencies of these pitches are on bass guitar, the low E, the 4-string bass, the low E is at 41 hertz. Now a 24 fret 4-string bass guitar frequencies range from 41 hertz to 400 hertz. I don't have 24 frets, which I only have 22 frets. The high D is the highest note I have, which is at about 350 some hertz, but the high G is at 398. So you get the high G on there, you'll have 300, a range of 41 to 400 hertz on that bass scale. Now on the scale, the E string is 41 hertz. Then you go a perfect fourth above the E string is your next string, which is A, your A string, 55 hertz. Now a perfect fourth above A is D, it's 73 hertz, and a perfect fourth above D is G, your G string, which is at about 98 hertz. And 98 hertz is about most of your male vocalists, that's their lowest range they can go, 98 hertz. There's rare people that can go lower than that, but that is the standard right there. 98 hertz is the lowest the male vocalist can go. So that's the lowest singing note you're going to hear most of the time is 98 hertz. Now, an interesting fact about hertz is the human ear can only hear the lowest frequency it can hear or distinguish as a note and distinguish a little color to it is 21 hertz. So if you've got that 5-string bass, that is why deciphering, figuring out some of those low B string notes when these songs go to low B, you know, they really get that growling low B. That's why it's hard to distinguish those notes, because your ear, that low B is at 31 hertz and it's only an octave higher than what we can distinguish by our human ears. So that's kind of interesting, because that's what makes it so difficult to figure those notes out. And I always wondered why it was such a struggle, but it just gets so muddy, and I always thought it was just in the mix, but it's just the fact that we can't hear that grade. We can hear it, but we can't distinguish what it is in that low end, as low as that. And that's on the 5-string bass. Now, I don't know if you knew, but Fender put out a 5-string bass as early as 1965, and it didn't go over very well, because the way they had the tuning set up on it. It was a tenor tuning, which put it at the high string wasn't a G, it was a C. So the 5th string added was a higher C, which just gave us a higher range, but it really wasn't necessary, and people didn't see the need to have that high C on their bass guitar. So about 1970 they stopped making it. And in 1975 Jimmy Johnson came back and came up and took that idea of the 5-string and had Alembic and GHS to help him modify the 5-string to where Alembic could adjusted the fret nut so it would fit a B string. So it was his idea to come up with the low B string, and got with GHS to create that low B string, and Alembic to adjust that nut to where it would contain a low B string. So that's how that came about in about 1975. So a little interesting fact there. That 5-string's been around for quite a while now, but didn't do great. Got forgot about for 5 years, and then the idea came about again, bringing that low B into play, in which it's been a great asset. If you ask me, I love my 5-string bass. By all means, I love that low B. Like I said, sometimes it gets a little harder to decipher those songs that drop down in that low B, but you can do it. It just takes you a little bit longer to do it. So what's cool is a lot of jazz bassists, soloists still use that tenor tuning, use that high C, so they have that high range for soloing on there. So that's kind of cool there. They still use that tenor tuning, and that's what they call that tuning. From that G up to that high C is a tenor tuning, but it's still perfect fourths, but it's just that high C gives us that tenor tuning. And if you didn't know, on tuning your bass, that the bass is a transposing instrument. It means that it's just for sight reading's sake, because when you're sight reading, when you see that bass clef, all of that has been transposed down an octave, or you'd be reading everything in the ledger lines, and that's not fun. When you get into the ledger lines, it gets a little difficult. It takes a little more practice to nail those notes down. So that's why they call it a transposing instrument, because they have moved they've transposed it down to where everything's on the staff lines. All the notes are on the staff lines. It's just lower an octave, so you're not reading in all ledger lines. And the best way to tune your bass is from a piano. Pianos stay in tune a lot longer. So typically, and what I've always done in the past, if you don't have a tuner or a tuning fork or anything of that nature, just go to an A on a piano and tune that to that A on the piano. Now the bass is, that G string is an octave and an 11th interval lower than the middle C on the piano. So you're not actually tuning that right to that A. That A is typically about 440 hertz. You're just getting the same pitch, so they're identical. Maybe not identical, but it's the same pitch, but it's just a lower octave. So you're not actually tuning that A string. As we said, the A string's on bass is about 55 hertz, and the A string on that piano that you'll be tuning to is about 440 hertz, as is a tuning fork. Tuning fork is always at 400. That thing vibrates at 440 hertz, creating that A note, which is what you tune off, which is what you'll tune from. And that A note is 3 octaves above your low A string. And when tuning your bass, always keep this in mind: the temperature and humidity will affect your bass, will take it out of tune. When you haven't even played it and you're thinking, oh, that thing should be in tune, just by sitting there, or the change of weather or change of humidity outside will affect your bass. Typically it won't as bad because you're in a conditioned home. If you've kept it outside or in your car or anything for a little bit of time, then you're going to have you're going to have issues with it going out of tune. Now, because basses are made of wood, and wood expands and contracts in temperature changes like that. So you're going to have the same thing here. And if you haven't subscribed to iwanntoPlayBass.com, jump over there, subscribe, become a free member, and get your free ebook on setting your bass up. And it also goes into in-depth how to take care of your bass to keep that, to keep the wood as longevity as long as possible, and just how to take care of that to keep that from happening. But like I said, if you keep it in the house or in a conditioned space, you don't have to worry about that as much, unless you're in certain areas of the world, or just humidity is just real high, or it's just real dry in areas. Those are going to affect your basses. So that's something to keep in mind when you're tuning your bass, because it's kind of like, how often should I tune my bass? Often as possible. Like I said, I've got a video out. Check that out. It gives you ideas on what to use, or kind of cheap ways to get your bass tuned. And I've got that link there also to tune your bass to at that website, at my website also. So get in tune and do it like that. But you should tune this as often as possible, because like I say, there's just changes in everything. You're taking it outside, and you're carrying it to a gig or bringing it back. Just being out there in that atmosphere for a little while will affect it to some point. So when you're up getting ready for your gig, you can tune your bass. Try to be as subtle about tune it before you get out on stage or something. Get that baby ready before you get out there. New fresh battery, get that baby ready. Don't wait till you're on stage and get a surprise, because like I say, a little story about my surprise, I learned it never happened again, but I've learned from it. I went up there, 9-volt battery was dead, lost all sound. So about halfway through that set, I had to stop and get a new battery. And not a surprise you like to have. You don't want to deal with that, at all. You want to be preventive maintenance, and that's one of them. 9-volt battery, fresh one at every gig, and just keep the problems down to a minimum. So that's a little bit about tuning, and a little fun stuff here to get into. Hope you can enjoy is strings, and a little history of the strings, which is kind of cool. If you've ever heard the gut bass and you've wondered where did that term come from and why did that term come about, the gut bass that term came about because of the strings they used. Back in the day, they didn't have the steel. They didn't make the strings out of steel. They made them out of catgut. And it's not from cat guts, but it's actually from sheep and horse intestines, which were dried and created a string. And that's where they got gut strings from. They still use gut strings, but they're more prevalent to use nylon. Nylon makes it a lot cheaper. Gut strings are actually pretty expensive, just because of the process that it's got to go to get these strings. So they're very expensive. Not a lot of people use them, but they still do use them. They are used a lot on the double basses and the Baroque feel, the bluegrass kind of type, that style. They use them a lot, and they stay away from the steel strings because they do such a slap. The technique style they use in those genres is like a slap bass, and it's really hard on your fingers if they were steel strings. So they stick with the softer material, which is nylon, and even better was catgut, but it's just so expensive. But they've gone to nylon to fill the gut string, to compare with that, to make it more affordable and still get that same sound that you're looking for when you're playing that Baroque style of music. So they got the gut bass was come from using gut strings, and then that gut string comes from catgut, which is kind of hopefully I didn't gross nobody out or anything, but it's a fact, and it's that's how we've evolved, which is a good thing. But 30 years from now, we'll look at stuff we did and think that was disgusting, or why do we do that? So just how things evolve, and that's kind of cool. Well, that is it. That is what is standard bass tuning, and hope you got some value out of this. If you did, help me help you. Hit that like button, and I'll catch y'all on the flip-flop in the next video. So bye for now.